Good evening, everybody, and welcome along to all those of you tuned in on Facebook Live or on YouTube for our Up for the Final. It's County Finals weekend here in the Galway Club Championships. Welcome on in. My name is Ollie Turner. I'm your MC for the next hour as we look forward, in particular, to the two big games in the Senior and Intermediate Football Championship, the two county finals. We've representation here tonight from Salthill Hotel, from Moyquillan, from Caltra and Unspidale. And in particular, we said we'd populate our top table with the very, very best out of each club. Unfortunately, they weren't available. So what we have... And as you can tell, we sent out an email. Only one person of the four read it as regards the dress code. But from Salthill Hotel, we've their former All-Ireland winning manager, Eoin O'Donnellan. One of Moyquillan and Galway's finest, Garrett Bradshaw. Another great Galway county man from Unspidale, Lorcan Colleran. And Caltra and Galway, and now TV pundit extraordinaire, Michael Meehan. All right, at least we know where the balance of power is now in terms of on the panel. Mike brought his own fan club. He's huge on social media. That's why he's getting the biggest cheer as well.
And we the longest to travel.
You had. The Caltras are here in big numbers, by the way. Thank you, Caltra, for coming here in big numbers today. All have voted, which is good as well, so well done to you. And they're in for the night into Salthill. We're in the luxurious surroundings of the Salthill Hotel. There is a wedding going on next door as well in the main room, so we're all being very polite here as we look forward to the big weekend in football. I did reference the fact that the cup in front, the Frank Fox Cup, is up for grabs. We were laughing as well that if you took the Currafin name off a lot of those little diamonds on the bottom, there wouldn't be too many more left on it. But there will be a new name for 2025 as regards this year compared to the last 2 years. So will it be Moyquillan for the third time since 2020, or will it be Salthill Knocknacarra for the first time, incredibly, in 13 years? So, Eoin O'Donnellan, we're going to ask you that first, because we heard a little bit earlier on from Finian Hanley when he was chatting during the week as well that, you know, for a club the size of Salthill, and obviously you were involved in a county success that went all the way to All-Ireland honours as well, but, you know, 3 county championships seems a very poor return for such a big club.
Absolutely. I mean, 1990 was our first one. I was playing in that, and then our own one in 2005, and then 2012 with Jerry Hughes as the manager. So it's it's vital, really and truly, that we win tomorrow. Not putting pressure on the lads, but we really need to get this one over the line, because from a club perspective, it's not 3 with all that's going on in the club, and there's phenomenal stuff going on in the club, but we really need to get this one over the line tomorrow, and it's going to take a huge effort. You know, Moyquillan is their 5th club final in 6 years, but we have a highly experienced bunch, a good mix of age, experience, and I'd be quietly confident.
We will be concentrating on the senior final for the first portion of tonight, and then obviously delving in and out of not just the intermediate final, which is the cup behind us here, the Cotter Cup, and of course the cup over to Donner's left is the Odlum's Purity Cup. So there's a table quiz question, if ever there was one, and that's for the junior championship between Williamstown and Carnacashel, which is hard to believe 20 years ago you beat in the county senior final, Donners.
We did. We went into that match as, and this is the thing about football and finals particularly, is we went into that match as hot favourites, and Carnacashel, they scored 2 goals, and we were suddenly on a back foot. And we squeezed through that match. We were lucky enough to get through that match at the end of the day, because that's the way football, that's finals particularly. You know, you see them bookies, who's the favourite, who's not the favourite. But come the day, come the hour, come the team. And tomorrow will be very interesting, because finals, they're there to be won, but they're hard won.
Garrett, we have to ask the obvious question, which is the fact that it's under lights. That's new in terms of a county final, but the fact that the 4 teams that played in the semi-finals and the 2 winners who are appearing in the final have had a run out under the lights. Surely that's going to help them in terms of what to expect.
Yeah, it should do, Ollie. I think Salthill probably, they've established a fine set of lights inside in the Prairie, so that'll definitely stood to them in the last 4 weeks in the build-up. Both sides having the opportunity to play under them 2 weeks ago will also stood to them. But what I get drawn to is I look at the Mike Cullen squad, and I see probably 9 or 10 lads that have inter-county senior experience, and that for me should be a telling factor if them players can perform. Like they've all been involved in the Galway environment, they'll have been under lights in Lough George, wherever it may be. So Mike Cullen really need to capitalise on that level of experience that they have tomorrow evening.
Now, if you start flexing your muscles about the amount of county players you have, I think you could be under a bit of pressure if O'Donnell starts rhyming off, okay, I'll see your Kellys and I'll raise you Finnerty and how many more.
The only thing is, Ollie, you can have as many county players as you want in the squad, but you have to fill your medal box when the opportunity comes, I think. And it's a key point, as Donner says, like, you know, with 10, 12 lads there, it's no guarantee that it's going to be a success, and the window of opportunity will come and go for this great era that Mike Cullen have. So they do need to capitalise and fill that medal box when the opportunity arises.
You better respond here, because the ball is only thrown in, Donners, and you're getting
certainly is
welted here.
Well, the one thing about it is, if you look at the semi-finals, I think brought the 4 best teams to Pearse Stadium 2 weeks ago, and there were 2 fantastic matches. There was a kick of a ball only between each match, and one of the any of those 4 teams could have come through. But on the day, I think Mike Cullen and Salthill are going to be very evenly balanced with the inter-county players, with the great club players that they have, and the desire that they have. And I know in Salthill, because I know a lot of these young lads, and I've been chatting to them, and just kind of trying to get it, to see what's behind it, and the desire that they have to get over the line tomorrow. I'm hoping that, obviously there's a lot more to go right for it, but they will definitely be up for that match tomorrow.
Well, you'd hope they would. I mean, it's
absolutely,
a county final.
It is a county final. But you know, sometimes if you're a young lad, nerves and everything can kind of take over. But I think they're very focused, and they were there in 2022. Last ditch goal meant that they obviously lost, but they've been there before, and I know Mike Cullen have been there before 5 out of the 6 times. But Salthill have been there before. They were in the semi-final last year. They learned a lot from that. And I think that Currafin match 2 weeks ago will really stand to them. The best thing that ever happened was Currafin coming back to them and Salthill only winning by 2 points. That was the best thing that happened to Salthill, because they really they have to keep their feet firmly on the ground now. And if they go ahead, they know that teams can come back, and they just got to keep putting the foot to the pedal the whole time.
Having said that, Gareth, like, what would Mike Cullen and Clancy and all the guys have learned from that second half Salthill collapse? Because it's very easy to say what the country lads would always have said about Salthill. You know, there's a soft underbelly there if you get at them. It seemed that way in the second half. I mean, they fell over the line. But what can Mike Cullen learn from what happened, that Currafin came back at them?
I think 2 very much contrasting styles, Ollie, when you look at both semi-finals, and I expect it to be that way tomorrow evening as well. I think Mike Cullen are a very measured side. I don't think they'll play end-to-end football similar to what Salthill did in the first half against Currafin. So I expect it might not be an exceptional game to watch. Mike Cullen will probe and be wary of turnovers. I expect Salthill to really try and capitalise on the transition, any opportunity that they get. Mike Cullen will have seen the good and the bad of Salthill. They'll have seen opportunities where they'll feel they can capitalise, whether that be on kick-outs. And if John Maher's out, Mike Cullen will definitely put a big squeeze on that kick-out, I expect. But there's no 2 ways about it. The pace that's in Salthill, Knocknacarra's team, is absolutely exceptional. I seen that firsthand when I was down close to them against St. James's in the first half and second half. They really did exploit the weakness with their transition when they get moving at pace.
Well, there must be some level of paranoia in Mike Cullen if you're saying if John Maher is out, because I'd say he'd be nominated for an Oscar for the best actor ever if he manages to appear. But that was a serious injury he suffered on, and like, with all seriousness, we're going to talk in a little while about the injuries to key players in the intermediate final. But for a lad who's the captain to miss out in the county final, I mean, let's be fair, that's pretty devastating.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone's talking about the effect it might have in the match or not have in the match. But actually, for poor old John himself to miss out on a county final, a huge match, biggest club match that he will play in today's, well, he would have played a couple of years ago, but to have the possibility of putting a medal on the table. But at the same time, he'll have a big influence in behind the scenes. You know, he'll be right there with the lads. He'll be encouraging them. He'll be in the dressing room at half time. So he'll still, great players like that, even though they mightn't be playing, still have a massive influence with management and with the players alike, not just before the match, but at half-time, which is a critical part of any match going into the second half.
Like, is there any doubt, Gareth, that Peter Cook will start in the county final, or what's the thinking out in Moycullen? I know the management will keep that tight, but clearly he had a huge influence in the Tuam Stars game.
Well, look, I think they brought him on in a semi-final, so why wouldn't you go and start him in a final, considering the impact that he had off the bench the last day? So in my mind, there's no doubt Peter Cook should play, given that they played him in a semi-final when he was only back 2 weeks. So look, the opportunity is now. The opportunity may not come around again, so you've got to put your best 15 on the pitch to get the job done. So in my eyes, he will play and he should play.
Let's get a neutral viewpoint for a few moments. We'll talk to Lurkon in a second. But Michael, it is interesting, obviously having played in senior final, the palaver that goes around a county final and the pressure that goes with it and whatnot. But for these two clubs, the fact that they're neighbours then, does that bring any extra dimension that the players know each other, would have gone to school together, a lot of them as well, and in the main are quite friendly towards one another, whatever about tomorrow night?
Yeah, there's going to be an element to that, and add to it, like, there's how many? 10, 12, 15 of them who've played county football together, so they know each other inside out. So the meetings during the weeks, and the build up to this, and they're trying to nearly second guess what Rob Finnerty is going to do, or what Peter Cook is going to do, or Sean Kelly, or the matchups. There's going to be. It's really kind of interesting to see how that's going to all fare out, because there is no doubt they've got huge knowledge on each other, and they've played in recent times as well at the latter stages. So that's I'm sure like the managers, Donners will probably echo that they'll want to try to keep it simple, and try the message in the final week, in the build up is just the key messages, the work is done, trying to stay focused and trying to build on the performance. So that's probably where they're at this week.
I can understand why Gareth would say, Lurkon, that this will be cagey and tight because of everything Michael said. But like, with two fantastic semi-finals, largely because conditions were good in Pearse Stadium, they'll be pretty good tomorrow night from what we reckon, weather-wise. No big wind, and the lights added to the atmosphere. Surely we're in with a chance of having a really good final.
Oh, absolutely, Ollie. I think the scene is set now for a wonderful contest between the two sides. We've seen unbelievable football in the semi-finals that brought them to this final stage. I suppose as Mikey alluded to there, the familiarity that they have with each other, the keen competition that they've had over the last number of years. The scene is obviously set for a real ding-dong battle tomorrow night, and under lights as well, to add to the atmosphere of the whole thing. I think it'll be amazing. I know Gareth was kind of half nudging at Donners at the start as well, but he's kind of right. Moycullen have a bit of a psychological edge on Salthill. Salthill going back over the last few years, not just the 22 final, but the quarter final as well in that period. So, like, is that going to play any factor in this game? Like, that the Moycullen lads have the belief, some of the Salthill Knocknacarra lads may need to convince themselves they can win this? Yeah, I suppose, but in thinking in that line we had in the semi-final, they were well on top against Corofin. Corofin came back, but when the match was there to be won, they stepped up and actually grasped it and got the score or two that was required to get over the line. Maybe in other years that might not have happened quite as easily. So no, I would think that, like, there's guys there that have played in serious matches on a huge stage. I think that stage is there for tomorrow, and I think they have certainly the ability to take it over the line. And at some stage, that decision will have to be made by one side or the other. Like, there's some heavyweight matchups to look forward to as well, Mike, isn't there?
Oh yeah, like, if you think, like, everyone here is a Galway fan, a Galway supporter, and we follow the team, over the last few years, and like the biggest names are there, like Rob Finnerty and Matthew Thompson were exceptional this year for Galway, for example. We all know what Peter Cook can do on his day. Sean Kelly. That's just they're everywhere. Poor John Maher. Your heart would go out to him, because he's been a cornerstone for Galway in the last few years, really, since he broke on. So it's just, I think anyone who's not there will be tuned in and will be really looking forward to this and to see, how the matches were going to go. But picking up on something that was mentioned earlier about the styles of play, Gareth, I think, and like we saw the best of Salthill in the first half, the pace and just the inside forward line clicking and what they were able to do to Corofin. And I don't for a second believe that they'll get those opportunities tomorrow, because Mike Cullen set up very differently. They'll be much more dogged, determined. It'll be a physical battle. I'd say they'd like a shower of rain and a bit of wind to pick up maybe as well, just to kind of slow down those Salthill lads, because definitely in that first half, you know, the way they dominated Corofin, like it was log off and head home nearly at half time. Sorry, Mike. But and then the second half transpired after that.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell why at half time in that semi-final, Salthill Knocknacarra were probably cut by a couple of points in the All-Ireland Club final betting. Don't mind the Galway Club Championship. They looked Kilmacud Crokes-ish in that context, the way they were going that well.
Yeah, it was, and I suppose maybe a little bit the injury at whatever 25 minutes for
eventually kicked in
for John Maher, you know. But you know, I suppose credit to Corofin, they got to grips and they just cleaned them out in midfield in the second half. And that's probably the Peter Cook angle in, is, you know, get him in there, get early pressure on in that area and try and, you know, pin Salthill back. They're great going that way. They showed us that, and they just have to cope with that. I'd say that real high press on the kickouts the next day.
Let's talk about the kickouts, Donners, and we'll pick our way through, because it'll be very easy for us to spend an hour here just talking about county lads. The chances are it won't be the county lads that might decide this county final tomorrow night. So let's look at, you know, the ins and outs of both of these teams and where the engine is. And we mentioned both goalkeepers, and we mentioned the impact they had. I mean, Donald O'Sullivan made the save from Liam Silk at the end, or this would be a very different lineup, and Salthill Knocknacarra would be in a very difficult and different place had they lost that 13-point half-time lead against Corofin. So how big a player is he for Salthill?
Oh, he's. I watched him in training. I've seen him in matches, but I watched him in training, and the shot stopping that you saw, that shot that he stopped the last day, and that's what goalkeepers have to do. That's what they're on the pitch for. You know, a full forward is there to score points. A goal is there to stop goals going in and kickouts. But his shot stopping is second to none. He's a fantastic shot stopper, and he has fantastic kickouts. But you're right, they have to vary their range of their kickouts. You know, there has to be a variety. If they go down the middle a lot of the time, it's very hard. Our two midfielders are fine big men, and they're great footballers, and they'll feel, but they might get, you know, I think what Salthill should do, they should cluster the middle tomorrow, to if Peter does A, start, and B, gets on a bit of ball, to stop the flow of ball going into Desi. I think that sector is going to be awfully important tomorrow. But we have fine, good players in there that, and the one thing about the Salthill thing, you mentioned about the steel of Mike Cullen, is that these guys have been together for a lot of years. They've come up through the underage. They know each other inside out, the vast majority of them. And they have a backbone in there that, I'll tell you, I think you're going to see a lot of that tomorrow. And especially, it's going to be a nip and tuck match, as we said. And what I think also is that where Salthill have the advantage, right? I could be wrong, but I think where they have the advantage, they can score from a variety of different places. You know, they've Cathal Sweeney, they've Danny O'Flaherty, you know, coming from midfield, coming up, plus what you have up front, you know. So I'm hoping that we have a bigger variety of score takers. We mightn't score as much as we did the last day because of the conditions, etc., even though I think the conditions will be okay. But we have a bigger variety of where we can get our scores.
Yeah, and I think to touch on that point, that will be a big dilemma for Mike Cullen, because there's probably 4 or 5 shooters there for Salthill. I don't know, can you say the same for Mike Cullen? And matchups are going to play a big part tomorrow evening, I think, who Mike Cullen decide to match up on Salthill shooters, because as we've seen in the first half, they put up 114 against a good Corofin defensive unit. So the Mike Cullen management are going to have their work cut out to try and get the matchups right, and even more so, with not being having the ability as they had the last couple of years to put 15 behind the ball. 1v1, they're such a crucial element of the game now, so matchups are going to be key tomorrow, Ollie.
Yeah, no doubt they will. I mean, we mentioned about Donald O'Sullivan with Pierce Greeley as well. I mean, there was at different times, you know, momentum goes with different teams, and you can lose 4 or 5 kickouts in a row and suddenly you're under pressure. There was certainly a lot more than 4 or 5 in a row for Salthill in that second half, where Corofin won nearly every kickout for, it seemed, 20 minutes. But that kick-out strategy then, how much work is put on that?
It's going to be huge, and I'll give one example. I think Mike Cullen will have felt after 25 minutes or 20 minutes in the county final last year, they were in a great position. They were probably playing against the wind. It might have been 3-2 to Corofin. Goal goes in, Mike Cullen lose the next 2 or 3 kickouts. Corofin put 3 points on the board, 6 or 7 points in the game. It's game over essentially when the weather's like that. So Mike Cullen will and have learnt the hard way last year against Kerfin, and they'll have put a huge element of focus on breaking that cycle of being unable to retain your own kickouts or the opposition dominating the kickouts. So it's going to be a huge focus area, and it's going to be really interesting to see tomorrow. But looking at Salthill, you look at the likes of the Mark Mannions, Evan Waynes, Cathal Sweeney's, they're actually dynamite on the breaking ball. So I think a huge thing Finian will be focusing on in that there's no primary possession run, and give these lads the best opportunity to win the dirty ball on the ground, which I think Salthill potentially may have the upper hand on.
Obviously the new rules, Michael, this year have led to an awful lot of really good games, and maybe the 2-point rule might have a bit of a bearing in this game as well. It generally does in Pearse Stadium, where there's a wind and you have a great chance of bombing over 2-pointers. That mightn't be as big a factor, but do either side have an advantage in terms of 2-point kicking?
I think in the first half, did Salthill kick 4 or 5 against Kerfin? The last day, and like perfect conditions, so they can kick them. We know Peter Cook stood up at the very end and kicked the important scores against Tuam Stars, so they're going to play a part. We're just talking about it on the way in the car. Like there's no, a 2 or 4 or 5 point lead. It's not what it was. It's a whole different psyche as a player. I'd imagine that you could be 7 or 8 points down, but you're no way dead and buried, because just 1 or 2 of them and all of a sudden it's game on. So it's brilliant for us, the people who are tuned in watching, and it has been a revelation for the game.
Mentioned that, Lorcan. I'm still trying to get my head around, 13, 14 point leads aren't safe anymore in football, because in old money they're probably 7-point leads when you think about it. So I suppose, we're still trying to come to terms as supporters that no game is really safe, is it, until the very, very end?
No, not at all, but I think it's the entertainment value of what we're seeing now is just remarkable. Through we'll say the senior championship that we watched the last year of, but even on the club scene now, that idea that you can go and streak ahead, but there's every opportunity that if you hold your head and play the conditions, and hopefully it's a calm day tomorrow, but if you play with your head, 10 points is very achievable as a comeback, and particularly with the quality of forwards on both sides. That's really, I think, they're going to be the standout feature tomorrow, when you have guys that are working as a club together, working as a team together, creating that space, and then looking for those 2-pointers that can really turn the game in your favour.
Yeah, there were obviously a couple of incidents as well in those semi-finals that were key, and I'm going to talk to a referee who will know all about new rules and stuff like breaches, where you don't keep the 3 up, or simple technical errors had a huge bearing. I mean, I'm thinking back to the Salthill collapse in the second half. The breather they got from the breach that Kerfin had probably saved them.
It probably did, yeah. I remember it clearly. Like it was a massive score, maybe Dylan Canny, I think, and then it goes back up, and Rob chips it over the bar, and instead of being 3 points, it went back out to 5 again. So it really was. I think we could have had a different scenario here if that, just the huge swell of momentum, because Kerfin still kind of picked it up and brought it back even after that. But I suppose it's a lot to comprehend as a player, management, the referees and the linesman. It's definitely not easy. It's one of the things that would have been flagged, when it was introduced. It's introduced at county level, and then there's a huge team of support around the referee there. And then going back to the clubs last May or March, April, May, and where there's only maybe one official there, it took a while to get going, I'm sure. But we're back in a good place now tomorrow night in Pearse Stadium, and there's going to be cameras as well. So it's everything should be fairly transparent, but it's just a lot to get on top of.
It is, and I mean, I remember vividly, Lorcan, the conversations amongst Galway people going to National League games and Championship games. Oh, the rules are great, but it's going to be a disaster at club level. And they were thinking back to one referee arriving down to a club match and trying to implement all these rules. But to be honest, it's worked really well. So maybe we should be giving a lot of credit to our officials, the way they've kind of managed to interpret the rules and understand them and communicate them.
No, absolutely, and it's a credit. I think a credit to officials and players with how quickly both came to grips with the new rules, brought the best out of football as what it is now. Long deliveries, great fielding, long scores, all the things that we loved about the game, sort of disappeared a little bit there for a while. But it nearly cost ourselves in the semi-final. There was a breach that gave Ballygar Brendan's an opportunity to get a score, brought it back level. Thankfully, we prevailed eventually. But I suppose, no, there's huge credit to all involved with the way. But I think when people are enjoying their football, it lends itself to adopting that and to playing in the right spirit of the game.
Yeah, we'll get, well, it's pretty obvious the predictions we're going to get in a couple of minutes from that side, but maybe on the neutral side. I'm going to introduce referee James Malloy, everybody. Give him a big welcome as well. James, come and join us here. Good to see you here. I suppose we have to mention first best wishes to Christopher Ryan. It's a big occasion for the Killannon man, is the county final at senior level. Is it different from a referee? Because we've heard from players that sometimes it's a different feeling, the nerves. Would you have got nervous before a county senior final?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's the pinnacle of every club referee, the senior county final to do it. It's first and foremost, I want to wish Chris and the officials the best of luck tomorrow. It's his first county final. He's on the national panel now, myself and Tom Murphy, for the last 2 or 3 years. So he's improving immeasurably. And I've no doubt he'll do a fantastic job tomorrow.
Okay, a couple of questions, because we're all intrigued by just how you cope with the rules, and like that moment in the Salthill Corofin game where you look at breach, and I never used the word in my life up until about 6 months ago, and now all you hear from the stands and everybody shouting at the sideline is breach, breach, breach. How do you cope with what is actually a breach, or define what it is first? And for me, I can understand how sometimes breaches are accidental because of substitutions or black cards ending.
Yeah, look, there's a couple of different elements to the breach, and that's where a lot of people up in the stands are kind of get confused. If there is a stage where if a player accidentally crosses the line while gaining possession of the ball, it's a free on the halfway line on the spot. Then you have another occasion where if a player just crosses the halfway line accidentally, you're given 4 or 5 yards of leeway to say, right, as a linesman, you tell them to come back, to push back, and you just get on with the game, because that can happen just accidentally, especially when you're not interfering with play. What happened in the Salthill game, luckily for Salthill at the time, because we were taking on a lot of water. The Corofin player, I think it was Kieran Malloy, had pushed up just, I'd say, got carried away. Maybe they got there, which is very important as well for the communication of players as well as linesmen. I'd say maybe the wing back he thought was gone back on the other side, and he tore up, a simple thing like that. But again, it's down to the sideline official and your linesman, because as a referee you can't call it, because you're just concentrating on the play.
And surely the linesman is as well. So who calls the breach? Who's watching that?
Well, normally what we do, again, all referees might differ with their team, but normally it's what we decide is the linesman on the far side will kind of tries to take control of the breach. So we'll say at the terrace side tomorrow in Pearse Stadium, that's normally what the linesman would say. If I was refereeing a match in Pearse Stadium, what I normally do is I tell my linesman on the terrace side to stay between the two 45s and keep more of an eye on the breach. Now, we'll also have a fourth official tomorrow. I'm not sure who's doing it, but he will keep an eye on the stand side. But again, the great thing now in club football, and you need it anymore, is all the referees and linesmen and officials are all mic'd up. So it's very quick to turn around and say, I know Richard McNicholas is one of the linesmen, so he could say, Chris, there's a breach. And then there's no special, Chris will turn around, blow the whistle, just give the signal that there's players crossing and gone too far, and there's your breach.
Are you ever put off in the middle of refereeing a match by somebody who's a bit too vocal in your ear, be it an umpire or a linesman? You know, sometimes you might go in at half time and say, look, shut up. I don't need to know that Liverpool have just scored against Man United. Just give me the actual information. Can you get too much stuff in your ear?
I think, Golly, he might be looking at me a bit too closely there if you give him the chance.
Was that a direct reference, was it?
No, was Evan Garrett. On the field, we had our plenty of tete-a-tetes, but off the field, it's all about.
But amongst your officials, I'm talking about, you know, communications is key, but, you know, you're trying to concentrate on what's happening on the pitch as well.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sure Chris will give his linesman tomorrow clear instructions. I always say, I don't want to hear anything like, oh, great call, Chris, great decision. I want yellow cards off the ball, red cards off the ball, black cards off the ball, breaches, state of fact, no more. Plain and simple, because you have enough to concentrate on. As you say, for referees during a game, 60, 65 minutes, 70 minutes long now in the club and in 80, it's nearly gone to 80 in inter-county. But you've hundreds of decisions to make during a game, and the last thing you want is someone flapping away in your ear when you're just trying to concentrate as best you can. You've enough for doing.
So the new rules have been positive. They've tidied up an awful lot, back chat, all of that sort of stuff. But what's the toughest thing? If you're Chris Ryan tonight, going to bed thinking about the county final, what's the worst thing, or what's the most thing he's worried about trying to get right?
Look, Chris is a competent lad. There's no issue with it. There'll be no problem with Chris. I suppose, look, the best thing you want to do every day in a match is when at the end of it, when people are saying, who was the referee? We didn't take notice of him, because with the new rules, like as Lorcan was saying there, it's bringing football back. It's brilliant, and it's great for us that we've actually slightly less decisions to make, I would say, because the ball is the solo goal is just brilliant. I mean, it clears out all that stuff where at the time you might be delaying the ball, or you're kind of tactically slowing down the ball, where you have to hand it back, the player tears off. So you're getting on with the game.
This handing back crack now. I mean, there's lads of a certain vintage down there that would have been playing with Caltra or with Mike Cullen back in the day, handing the ball to your opponent. There you go, good man in. Now there's your free. Seriously? I mean, is that something that's going to stay for real? Or, I mean, how strict are you on that?
Well, that's the thing, you see. Sometimes we always get it in the ear from players or whatever. Listen, we can only implement the rules. We don't make them. So again, if Chris isn't doing his job tomorrow, I'm sure he'll be like, if a Salthill man doesn't hand it back to Mike Cullen lad, you can be sure Mike Cullen will be on Chris's case, and vice versa. So like, you just, no, look, you have to, again, there's certain rules that we mightn't like, but that's not our job. We have to implement them. Do you know what I mean?
James, great to talk to you. Thanks a million. That's James Malloy, everybody. Cheers, James.
Ollie, could I just say, by the way, you know, you're talking about flapping in the ear. We played a Junior D match out in Killannon against Outherard, and he was corner forward. He must have breached about 3 or 4 times, and he roaring and shouting at the referee, denying it the whole time. So I'm smiling at him here, very strict.
Referees that continue to play junior, that needs to be outlawed. That can't go on. Before we get back to the lads, I'm just in my mind trying to picture Garrett Bradshaw handing the ball to Michael Meehan after it wouldn't have happened. You'd have retired if that rule came in.
Well, I'd have been sent off probably first. But I think the biggest thing the players will look for tomorrow is consistency. And it is a challenge for referees. There's no two ways about it. They're adapting to new rules. And there's no two ways about it. Both teams will have studied Chris Ryan's performances to date. He's probably a very technical referee, and that's what they'll be expecting. But once the players get consistency, I think from minute 1 to minute 70, I think that's all they can ask for. And hopefully, as Jamesy says, the man in the middle won't be the talking point after tomorrow, and it'll be an exceptional performance from one of the two teams.
I think we've good referees on in Galway at the moment. The top 3 or 4 guys at senior are very good.
Absolutely. And actually, one thing I was concerned about in relation to the rules is as you went down the ranks, you know, from into junior and junior, that maybe they wouldn't be able to control it as much. But being involved, and joking apart, being involved with the junior season, they actually were great, you know, and how the players adapted to it as well. I think it's come together fantastically. Yeah,
and it certainly adds to the occasion as well. Just for Lorcan and Michael as well. I mean, people are talking about a real possibility of a draw, and that means obviously a replay tomorrow as well. Is it going to be that tight, or have you an inkling towards either side actually winning, Lorcan?
Well, I suppose our big fear is in the quarter-final and semi-final where the slow starts. And I think if Spiddle can get out of the blocks, or at least hold Caltra in that earlier stage in the first half, that's the key piece. I don't see coming back from 6 points against Caltra in the second half. Might be a little bit more difficult than what it was in earlier matches.
What about the Mike Cullen Salthill game?
Mike Cullen Salthill, I definitely see very tight. I think that quality, inter-county experience, club experience, finals won, finals in previous years, very hard to call, particularly if the conditions are as they are tomorrow, which is hopefully nice. Lovely game of football. 2 great sides, hard to call it between the two.
Yeah, we didn't bring you along here tonight just to sit on the fence. I mean, are you going for the council or something? Are you for votes in both parishes?
I hadn't finished, Ali.
Okay, I know. There's definitely a prediction coming at some point here. I know, it is impossible, isn't it, Mike? Is it as simple as Peter Cook in, John Maher out, advantage Mike Cullen?
No, it's not, but it's definitely a leveller. You know, okay. I believe it is, and as impressive as Salthill have been, you know, that is, you know, there's a huge leverage in that for Mike Cullen, and I think there's great motivation coming out of the club and Mike Cullen for this final as well. So I just think it is set up for a rip-roaring contest. You know, we want to see the football that we expect. And going back to a point that was made earlier, we're name checking all the county players that we all know and have followed and support, but the chances are it's often someone else who steps to the fore tomorrow in a county final day in a big match. It could be someone that just, you know, lands up with a goal or the block or whatever it is, and that launches their team on. But and the draw is very real. It is very real. It is very real. I'm probably a bit green this weekend, so that's probably where my
Yeah, I understand.
That's probably where if you're pushing me, that's where I'm going.
Okay, fair enough. It's not that when you drive to Caltra they're supporting Mike Cullen. They actually have their own game to look forward to, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I do want to switch over to Mike Finnerty from Galway GA TV. Stream Sport, of course, showing the big game, Mike, as well this weekend. Before we, I think obviously you know Mike is a Mayo native. You've got your own county final replay to look forward to this weekend as well. Now, whoever comes out between Salthill, Knocknacarra and Machwillan tomorrow night might have to look at either Ballina or Westport in a kind of club final a few weeks down the road. But going back to the Mayo County final, what sort of a game was that? Can we expect something similar in Galway?
Yeah, I suppose first off, I got the visa stamped in Shrule on the way up, and this is all new to me, Ollie, coming along to hear about the big hitters in the Galway Club Championship. Look, if tomorrow evening's game is half as good as what Ballina and Westport served up last week, especially in the second half, I think people are in for a real treat. For anyone who may not have been aware, I suppose the headlines afterwards dominated by a pretty big collision between Lee Keegan and Pádraig O'Hora. It seems as though Lee Keegan won't play tomorrow. Pádraig O'Hora may well have recovered in time, and no more than what the lads were saying about John Maher and Peter Cook. That's going to be a big factor, I think, in how the replay goes. But it was a sensational game of football. It looked like the Stephenites at one stage were going to win, pulling up 8 points ahead after about 15 minutes. They got reeled back in, and they had to come from behind to get a draw. So we had a draw in Mayo last weekend. We had 8,000 people, I think, in Castlebar. I wouldn't back against a draw in Salthill tomorrow either.
Well, there's every chance. So Galway GA TV and Stream Sport. I mean, you've been on board for the last couple of years in the Galway Championships. How has this year's championship got? Because the whole streaming concept kind of kicked in around COVID, and a lot of people have stuck with it.
Yeah, like you said, look, there's a really, really good relationship between Galway GA and Stream Sport, and we're delighted to collaborate with Galway Bay FM this year as well. And look, it's gone from strength to strength. We've 6 county finals on Galway GA TV this weekend, the 2 juniors, the intermediate final on Sunday, tomorrow evening, and the 2 camogie finals. And in our experience, we now operate in a number of different counties. The interest in streaming has grown season on season, year on year. Look, after COVID, it became a part of everybody's life. You know, people got used to, if you can't get to the game, it's the next best thing. There's a lot going into the production tomorrow evening, for example. Just, again, people may not be aware, I suppose, of what goes in behind the scenes, but we have pitch side presentation. We're delighted to have Kevin Johnson, the former Curra Finn manager, working with yourself on the sideline, Jonathan Higgins and Eddie Hoare. We'll have 3 cameras. We'll have pre-match build-up, post-match reaction. And that's because there's an appetite there now for the best we can deliver from week to week, from game to game. And certainly there's been a phenomenal interest in both the Galway football and hurling championships this season. I think it's because they're very competitive, a lot of teams in the mix, and nobody's too sure who's going to come out on top.
Mike, great to talk to you. Thanks very much to Mike Finnerty, Mabula Boss. Yeah, such, I mean, it's huge, Mike, for a lot of culture people around the world, you know, lads who had to go to Australia, or people that are in, you know, Dubai, America, wherever they are. They'll all be glued, I'm sure, to this final on Sunday as we switch our attention to the intermediate final. And it is, you know, I suppose for Caltra, a sense of deja vu, being there last year. What lessons do you think will your boys learn from the defeat to St. Michael's in the replay last year, this time around?
Yeah, I think they'll take a lot from it, in that, like, the most important thing last year, having been away and out of the scene, you know, in terms of competing in finals, semi-finals for so long, they Caltra turned up and performed, you know, both days. Just fell short. You know, some exceptional performances by St. Michael's players in the replay, I think, was some of the key differences. But you know, by and large, quite a young team coming out of Caltra. So to get back, you know, straight away, you know, they can take a lot from it, Ollie, but like, that's not going to get them there either, you know. But certainly, I think the new, like everyone, they've adapted to the new rules quite well and have been trending in the right direction from, you know, the Kilkerran-Clonberne beat Caltra in the first round of the group. But since then, just I've seen improvements throughout in every game. I know they confined it all into the second half the last day, because the first half, Cur Finn started fast and just got inside us a couple of times, but we'd enough wherewithal just to stay in the game and then to push on in the second half and came good at the right time.
It was interesting, Lurcon, that both semi-finals were practically the same, with Unspeedale coming from 6 down, Caltra coming from 6 down, and timed your run just at the right time to get over the line against a strong St. Brendan's team.
No, absolutely. And I think the quality that they showed in the second half, the pace, I think the new rules actually suit them very well, in that the Olais have great pace, great footballing ability. When there was 15 men behind the ball, they found it difficult to, obviously, every team, to breach those sort of defensive lines. But the style, the speed at which they play when they get rolling, I think, is the key piece. So I think the main thing, as I mentioned earlier, is to try and hold things, keep things tight in the first half, and then if they can unleash, as they did in the second half against Brendan's, I think we'd be hoping for a good day out.
You have an interesting character between the sticks as well, in Manus, who's got a long and colourful career. I mean, this time last year, he was involved with Carrarua, winning the junior and going on to win the All-Ireland club, and here he is now back between the sticks. But in all seriousness, his 2-point kicking when he comes forward is exceptional for a goalkeeper.
To be honest, Ollie, I think Spittle should be making a case for a 3-point arc, because he's kicking them from that distance. He was nearly the halfway line, and the score he got in the second half last week. No, his shooting is outrageous. The point he kicked from the ground, obviously, to win the match at the dying seconds, was fabulous, was fantastic. He's a huge amount of experience. He's played at the very highest of levels. I suppose he's experienced now from both sides of the sideline, both playing and from the management side of it. But he's been around a long time. He's seen a lot, and his inspirational plays, I think, are really brilliant on the younger players that are playing with Spittle as well, to bring them along. So please God, something similar tomorrow.
He's one of those players that you want to keep him out of the game. I'd say the players around him maybe feed off those big scores. So, and it's a long time ago since myself and Gareth played with him for Galway. But yeah, and even back though in those days, he was a bit of a pioneer. Really, he was fond of going sallying up the field a little bit long before it became fashionable. But that's the kind of character he is. He'll nearly try anything. So he needs watching. Believe it or not, he does. He needs watching, and it could, if you could pick his pocket on the way out, there might be something in that for Caltra. I'm sure they're looking at that,
and that'll quieten him. I better mention Sean Kane, because he was the talk of the county after the intermediate final last year, and for that young man to suffer the injury that he suffered to his knee is pretty tough. That was a quarter-final, so he missed the semi-final, but he was there at the trainings all along, a bit like John Maher. He'll be in the dressing room with the guys as well. How tough is it for him, or how much of an inspiration might he be?
It's been very tough for him, I would imagine. Porry Joyce called him in towards maybe this time last year, and he did a pre-season with Galway. He was with them in New York, and I remember talking to Porrick in New York about him, and he was very happy with his impact as a personality and as a player in and around the dressing room. Now he left the panel shortly after that, but he came back to Caltra flying, and he was having a huge season again. And he's a young man, and he did everything he could do damage-wise in his knee in that quarter-final game. But he's a big character. He's a leader. He's a confident guy, and I'd say he's going to have a big impact in and around the group. He's a date for a surgery, I think, coming up next month as well. So it would be massive for him to be looking forward to coming back into playing senior football.
Caltra have a few big guns, Gareth, as well, even if you haven't seen a whole pile of them, but you'd recognise the names because they're the ones that keep appearing on the match reports or the man of the matches, or anytime you hear a mention of the team of the week on Galway Bay FM. And Alan Naughton is obviously top of that list, a forward that a lot are tipping could be looked at from a Galway context in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think Galway football probably has to potentially look at players that are performing well at club level, whether that's junior, intermediate or senior. The new rules have come about this year. I think it's a real good opportunity for Porrick to scan the county and see which players are actually suitable for the rules and can kind of thrive off these rules. And whether you're a senior player or an intermediate player, if you can impact the game like you're saying some of these Caltro lads can, and even Spiddle lads, they're well entitled to be putting up their hands and asking the question, why haven't I involved in a inter-county setup next year? And I'm sure Porrick will have that window of opportunity there for them. So while it's a great opportunity to win and put silverware in the back pocket, it's a great shop window as well to potentially put your hand up for an inter-county squad.
Yeah, there's no doubt, Lurcon. I mean, Finian Olai has been there and been involved and brings a huge amount of experience and physicality even. It's is he the driving force really of this Unspidale team?
Absolutely, yeah. I think he's played predominantly around the middle of the field, but he's one of 5 of the Olais. Anthony inside him has done an awful lot of the scoring. I think the scene is set actually for Finian to unleash a little bit more in the final tomorrow, used to big stages, used to big matches, with the support of his brothers around him. I know Mikey would have experience of that type of experience playing with brothers, and as we would have ourselves back in the day, in the early days of my career. But it brings a different motivation. You're getting it at the breakfast table, you're getting it at the dinner table, and it's continuous focus on what you're going to do on the big day. If Finian can bring his A game to the match on Sunday, I think that will be one of the basic requirements for Spiddle to get over the line.
If Caltra have, and they put 117 on the board against Corofin, including what did they kicked over 13 points in the second half alone. Who are the key defenders that Unspidale will appoint to the likes of Keelan Murray, Alan Naughton? Who are the man markers?
Yeah, I suppose Dara King, who would have soldiered with myself many years ago, has been around, huge experience playing in the full-back line, full-back normally. Liam Kelly, who was away last year, himself and Finian were actually travelling, so it would have been a huge loss to the team last year, but have come back now and played a full year with the club. Liam, very experienced, very solid player, well able to go. So yeah, they'd be the main, I think, driving force behind in the defensive element of the team. Yeah,
and of course, I mean, from Caltra's perspective as well, we better mention Oran Lockery. He had a great championship last year as well, and he's a key stopper. And I suppose at the back as well, Caltra will be very much hoping that Rian Henley Ryan comes back. Mike, is that a big part of Sunday? The fact that your full back is there.
Yeah. No, I'm looking down at his mum here as well. So we're all willing, as much good energy in his direction in the final few hours. So I'm not sure how he's fixed, but he's a pillar in that. As a young man, he's a pillar in that team.
Would Mammy tell us? Does she know at this stage?
She might. I don't know. We won't ask her. But yeah, he's just, and to be fair, Tommy Morrissey is another man missing out the full back line for a couple of rounds now as well. So it's such an important area of the pitch. But Oran Lockery, and he was another man that Porry Joyce brought in at the end of last year. So like we said earlier, it is a shop window for players, and certainly with the new rules, Porrick and his management team are certainly looking for maybe a slightly different type of player this year, be they in Spiddle or Caltra or wherever else. But there's we're talking about the Caltra team there, and there's a lot of young guys, but they look like leaders, they act like leaders, they are leaders, so there's a great sense of they've come together from probably under 16, under 17, under 19, that they've a lot of medals won, be it at A, B or C, even in St. Coon's College, they've All-Ireland Club medals, so there's a nice little habit of winning, and I suppose the Caltra crowd here today are hoping that they can add another one, probably the most important one that they can get to date on Sunday, but it's going to come it's not going to come easy.
Yeah, and there's no real kind of form line between Caltra and Unspidale. It's not like you've been meeting them in the last couple of years in the championship, so there's a very much a newness about it, is there?
We have an inside man though, in Spid, we do.
Who's that? You have a spy?
We have, yeah. Declan Meehan we planted him there about 2 years ago. So.
Okay. So Decky is feeding him back.
He is, yeah.
He has a drone. Is he flying in on the Unspidale pitch?
Hopefully he's not lining out for Spiddle on Sunday or something.
There is talk of that very thing happening.
They might spot Daglan O'Meachan coming on at number 24.
Something different I'm expecting. You're right, there's no huge form line, but completely different to the senior game. Caltra now without Sean, not the most physically big team in around the middle of the field, and I think it's the same to say for Spiddle. So you'll see a very different kind of kick out and breaking into spaces. I'd imagine it'll be a very different kind of that first possession off the kickouts could be very, very different to what we might see in the senior game.
But you did terrifically well against Corofin around the middle of the field. The two boys were up and down, like it was real energy.
Good on the ground, you know. But in terms of the big fielders, the Michael Kitts or these guys, the Peter Cooks, you know, that you'll see tomorrow night, it could be a very different battle in that middle third.
Donners, it's a very different pressure an intermediate final, because while winning this cup is lovely, it's really the prize about getting into the senior championship. So does that bring a different sort of pressure for the players in terms of you lose, you're stuck down an intermediate for another year?
Well, I know because I played intermediate with Salthill before we went senior, and intermediate is the hardest one to get out of, you know. And if you slip into intermediate, it can be so difficult to get back up senior. So it's a huge challenge for both Caltran and Spidgel on Sunday. And then when the team gets into senior, it's keeping there and make sure they maintain that status, which can be difficult at the same time. But I mean, I remember Caltran, because actually when I was managing Salthill back in 04, 5 and 6, Caltra and Kilruane, they were the teams to beat. You know, so it's how quickly you can get back to, you know, be down in intermediate. So when you get back up again, it's to stay senior is your goal. You know, so initially.
On Spithill down Lurkon 2 years ago, and the two teams were coming down. That's why they got caught in that trapdoor with St. Michael. So is there a huge determination to now get back up at the second time of asking?
Oh, absolutely. And I think for a club like Spittle to achieve that senior status is everything for the group of players that's involved at the moment. They've worked incredibly hard over the course of the year, and I suppose the thing is that you have years where things just click, and having the two guys back from their travels last year, I think, was the initial momentum. The league form wasn't great this year, but there was a turning point, I think, in the Comórtas Spella competition where they got to the semi-final, and I know, having spoken to a number of them, that there was something that clicked over that weekend where things started rolling in the right direction. They obviously topped their group in the group stages of the championship and have put together two good performances to get them into the final. I suppose a big consideration would be the fitness around Liam O'Conneilla, who obviously a marquee forward, came on in the semi-final and lifted the team with the score. Hopefully his fitness is 2 weeks further down the line, having played in the semi-final. But if you can get all the pieces in the right place and everybody pulling together in the right direction, I think that could be the initiative that will get them over the line at the end of the day.
And I'm sure you remember as well, Gareth, where Mike Cullen used the intermediate championship going back almost 20 years now as a springboard, you know, getting a good run at the provincial championships, winning that, getting, you know, to an All-Ireland final, winning that. Could either of these clubs use this intermediate run, if they get through Sunday, to really bounce positively into senior, something that St. Michael's struggled with?
Yeah, I think both sets of finalists will be looking at a progression in the All-Ireland series. I think it's a huge opportunity once you win Galway. It's such a competitive, and the skill level is so high, you're going to be with a good chance of winning a provincial title, and who knows from there on. But yeah, both teams will use it as a springboard. I think the pressure, I think the experience last year that Caltra experienced in not getting over the line, I think the age profile of their group, playing the game down in Tuam, I do think, my own opinion, my angle will be looking at, listen, I think Caltra have ticked all the right boxes so far. Spittle will definitely, I think, feel the pressure that bit more. Second year down in intermediate, they're not essentially used to it. And I do think that the weight could be on their shoulders tomorrow and on Sunday, and I would expect Caltra to potentially get over the line. Yeah.
I just want to outline that the Green Party had nothing to do with the setup here tonight as well, but there's definitely a Green Alliance going on here.
Sorry, Ollie, can I come in? Would you like my prediction now?
Right of reply to Unspithill.
Would you like my
Councillor Colleran, please.
No, I think I disagree. But no, all good points. And in fairness, the competitive nature of what it's going to be on Sunday is who's going to want it most, I think. I think our lads have a desire and an appetite that hasn't, I suppose, it wasn't there last year. But the last time, I guess the springboard we're talking about, the last time they went up, they went on to run, won Connacht, lost in the semi-final to the team from Belfast, but it was a wonderful journey for the club and it lifted a lot of boats in that area.
And that was in Tuam Stadium, the provincial final. So
there's one point that I can tick off.
On Spithill. And the fact that the two semis, Gareth, were in Tuam as well, a bit like the senior, surely the venue shouldn't matter in terms of the intermediate final, even if you were kind of geographically a bit looking towards Caltra having an advantage in that front.
Potentially, it might not, in my own opinion. I think a lot of them Caltra lads may have got to school down there, they'd have played in Jarlath, wherever. Them nurseries for football, they'd be very familiar with Tuam Stadium. I'm not sure Spithill will have. I'm not saying it's going to be a major influence, but I think it's definitely one that Caltra will be ticking that box and saying, look, let's use this to our advantage, lads. We've been down this stretch. We've come down the stretch last year in Tuam Stadium. We didn't get over the line. What have we learned from that? Niall Coyne is a shrewd operator as a manager. And I think
tell you, if Spidgel do win and go senior, there's going to be some rivalry between Mike Cullen and Spidgel going forward.
And I'm not being dismissive of Spittle by any means. I do think a lot of pressure is on Spittle tomorrow, though. On Sunday, I do. Second year down there, they have a lot of experienced players. Spittle really do need to get over the line. And I've no doubt, as Lorcan says, they'll come with a lot of grit, determination and whatnot. And listen, who knows what will throw up on Sunday.
It's a great match to look forward to. And a bit like we wished Chris Ryan the very best, we got to wish Anthony Coyne the very best as well from Milltown. Big day out for him as well, county final as well. And again, a bit like James said earlier on, we hope nobody's talking about a referee in terms of the decisions as well. But I think that we should be looking at a good game. Do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. The weather, it is what it is at this stage in the year now, and Sunday Pearse Stadium is going to be in good nick. There's no doubt about that. Whether you might have a wind blowing into the town goal, but there's nothing unusual about that. It'll give some lad a chance to kick a 2-pointer, maybe a bit more.
Would you prefer Caltra not to be letting their opponents get as far ahead as they did in the semi-final and look at that?
Yeah, I think everyone in the room here who's looking at it with a Caltra tinted glasses, that quick start I think will give us all a bit of a happier first half the next day. We have tended to let teams maybe just get ahead a little bit or settle quicker than we did. Now it hasn't cost us per se, but on the final, when everything's, you don't leave anything to chance. So they will want to play it on their terms as much as they can. But I didn't pay Gareth anything to say what he said, by the way. But I nearly feel I have to come back in and defend Spittle. But there's no doubt that the Caltra dressing room, when they're looking at the players, the O'Leys, there's going to be detail on Manus Brannock potentially. Liam O'Callaghan is probably going to line up against Alan Naughton. There's a lot of work done to try and figure out how can we negate what they offer, and so that we can do what we can do. And we talked about him earlier, like Sean Kane. Like if you had him, like everyone here in the room would be another foot taller coming into Sunday if you had him, fit and available, and Rian as well. So it's going to be a huge monumental ask for Caltra to be able to beat Spittle without those players. But I suppose I do think, based on what they've shown us, that they will give us what they have, and hopefully that'll be enough.
Well, either way, we're set for a brilliant weekend, aren't we? Are you looking forward to it, Owen?
Oh, I think it's going to be fantastic. I mean, if it's anything like it was 2 weeks ago, that was one of the best afternoons I spent in Pearse Stadium watching those two matches. And if tomorrow is anything similar, it's going to be a fantastic day out.
Yeah, great occasion, but all about the result, maybe. That the bottom line, Gareth?
Absolutely. Finals are there to come, perform, big players. Wait for these big days to perform and show up. And yeah, I think Mike Cullen, just looking at their big game players, they'll probably question themselves the last 2 years. They've had Caroline Curran this year. I think she'll have them laser focused going into it. And they'll know they'll need to show up. The likes of Sean, the likes of Peter, the likes of David Wynn, they'll really have tunnel vision the next day. And Salthill's hope will be that they'll try and sneak in. I know they were there in 22. Young players get in, get the job done, and get out, and that's what Finian will be thinking too. But I think both finals are probably. Listen, I know I've said I pitched for Caltra, but I think 50-50. There's no two ways about it. But I'm not going to sit in the fence on this one. I think if Mike Cullen can bring Salthill down the stretch, I fully expect Mike Cullen to get over the line. I think they're a very measured, good probing team, potential for 2-pointers, and I think it will get them over the line if they can bring them down the stretch.
Final couple of comments then from Lurcon. I mean, what's the mood in Unspeedale? Are you confident or nervous about Sunday?
Absolutely confident, I would say. There's obviously a natural nervousness about the day among the squad themselves, but have prepared very well, hoping for the best. Have some, again, with the likes of Finian and Antona going well. Please God, that will be enough to get us over the line against Caltra.
And for Caltra, 7 years, long enough, Mike, down in intermediate, time to get back up with the big boys.
Time to shine, Ollie.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for our panel, Owen, Gareth, Lurcon and Michael. Don't forget, live coverage of both county finals and the curtain raiser to both games as well. We want to wish the very best of luck to Williamstown and Carnacashel in the primary junior final. That's 5:30 tomorrow evening, live from Pearse Stadium, and also on Sunday, 12 noon from Tuam Stadium for the primary junior 2 final between Claregalway and Anna Downs. We wish those teams the very best of luck in their primary finals as well. They'll have a big part to play in the 4 big football weekends. Mike also referenced the Camogie finals weekend and all of the Gaelic games going on over the weekend. We hope you enjoy your games. But for everybody watching our Galway GA TV and Stream Sport production tonight, we wish you well at the weekend. We wish all of the clubs the very best of the weekend, and we hope the celebrations go long into the bank holiday Monday. Thanks for watching from the Salthill Hotel. It's good night.